It's that timeless pursuit of when art merges with the artist, where we put ourselves out there, find that moment of motivation, and ride the momentum, and then love the very art we create. These are all deeply linked to the soul of who we are. Some say you might be able to measure that, but perhaps it is a blind pursuit. Hello, everybody, and welcome to 21 Grams. It is the season finale, the last show of the season, and I'm super excited to have my guest to help me close it out today. He is none other than the awesome Mr. Ben Meeks. Mr. Meeks, nice to see you.
Hey, thanks, Joe.
Great
to be here.
I always love to start this show by asking my guests to kind of give us an overview of themselves. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you do it.
Well, I'm a full-time author. I do sci-fi fantasy. I have a sci-fi lit RPG series I'm working on. I started off with an urban fantasy series. And that's pretty much what I do. Beyond that, I'm a father and husband and woodworker, and
And a
that takes
beautiful
up all my time.
craftsman. Beautiful
Yeah.
craftsman.
Here's a brand new one. Look at that one.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
You're incorporating looks like different textures there.
Well, this is first thing I love. That here's a different one, and that's the same thing. Wait, where's my camera?
There you.
So this is cypress.
Oh, cool.
I actually cut it from a tree. It came from a branch off of a tree right outside my house here, and then I turned it into the pen. And it has, I guess, because it's from a tree branch. You know what I mean? It has so many imperfections, but that's what makes it pretty. So
Yeah.
I love those cypress pens. They're great.
Yeah, the burn fingerprints, basically what they call them, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Bobby says your pens are awesome. Hello, Mr. Nash.
Hey, Bobby.
And Anita's here. Hello, Anita. Yeah, I'm fascinated by. I mean, you and I have had so many conversations about this process that you go through and what you do, and I was privileged enough to be hanging out with you a lot at Dragon Con and seeing, and you had a specific person just down the way from you who was kind of somebody you were admiring with their pens. And
Very gross. Yeah.
and
He's the man.
And so you were talking a lot about pens with me in that respect, and then of course I got this one from you, so which is beautiful and I love it. I'm curious, craftsman wise. First off, how long would you say on average it takes you to craft a pen that you're happy with?
Okay, well, it depends on a lot of things. So, for example, what it's made out of, okay? An epoxy pen like yours versus a wood pen like the cypress, epoxy pens take longer to make. Wood pens I can make real fast, but the caveat, like the cypress branch I cut, I've had it sitting in the garage drying for over a year before I was able to really use it. So if you count that time in, that pen took a long time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a lot of investment of, garage space sitting there, but it's worth it. So as far as just the turning, like if you had all the materials ready, I can make a pen that I'm happy with. If it's wood, if I'm doing a speed run, okay, which I don't do a lot, but if I'm doing a speed run, I could get it done in 25 minutes.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure. Epoxy, probably 35. And that's because the epoxy requires a different finish, and it's plastic. So as you cut it with the tool, it creates these little strings of plastic, and a lathe spins. And then if you don't have, like, I've just moved recently and my shop isn't set up, and I turned one epoxy pen, actually this one right here, and it took me a lot longer because I didn't have my suction set up to pull that away, and so it
Uh,
would constantly get wrapped up around everything, and then you can't see it, and you got to turn it off and pull it out, and you know what I mean. So with an optimal setup, about 30 minutes, give or take. And that's fast, but
mhm.
yeah,
Do
I'd be
you do you, how do you determine when the time is to make new pens? Is it kind of I'm kind of curious about the creative energy behind it, right? Is there a notion to do it for you? Do you feel like there's a challenge you want to take on and you decide I'm going to do this, or is it a demand? How do you determine when you're going to start creating new pens?
well, I started doing it just because I liked it,
Uh-huh.
putting a blade to wood or plastic, spinning at, 3,000 RPMs is a lot of fun. But so I started doing it just because I enjoyed it, and I
uh,
was just trying things, and then I acquired a lot of pins because, so I did a lot of shows, so I thought I'll start putting them on the table, and they started selling. So at that point, they're entered into it a inventory mindset to a
mm-hmm,
certain extent,
hmm.
Um, so my setup now, I would normally have 21 pins displayed at a time.
Mm,
And so I try to, if I'm going to a show, to have at least 21 pins, you know. But well, and also I kind of have my standard, models, so to speak,
mhm,
that I keep. And then there's things I do for fun that I play with. And again, because of the move, I haven't done some of these that I wanted to. But like for example, one, this is Gaboon ebony. That's
mhm,
wood. That's
mhm,
not epoxy. And one thing I want to do is take this and take different metals, brass, aluminum, whatever, and then cut it in wavy patterns and inlay that metal into it. So then when you cut it, you have this. I think that would be really cool, and I just want to
yeah,
do it for the fun of it, but I haven't got to do it yet. So
kind of like an onyx almost kind of idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's lots of ideas I have for different kinds of things to do, and yeah, when I officially get settled, I will get back to playing a little bit more. But right now it's production mode, and my last show, no, 2 shows ago, Pensacon, I did Pensacon, and my pins sold like crazy. It was
Nice.
nuts. So that was great, but the
Yeah,
problem was, um, I think I had like 11 pins total,
uh,
so if I'm used to having 21 and I'm down to 11, I can't hardly stock what I'm used to. So right now it's just production mode. I'm trying to make 4 a day this week, which I've been doing.
mm.
And so 4 more tomorrow, and then I should be all right for this convention I have this weekend.
And typically, people who have visited you note that you have one or two pens that are usually higher in price, higher in value. Uh,
Yeah.
are those a different creative thing for you, or is that when it's really fun for you, or is that more of the challenge aspect for you in that respect?
Well, it's not so much challenge because once you get like your base skill set down,
Uh huh.
right? Like how to apply the finishers you're using well, and you
Hmm.
know how to cut. That aspect is pretty much always the same, right?
Right.
But with those pens, I do try to do something special. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? There's not going to be anything else like that on the table. It's
Yeah.
one of a kind. And actually, I sold that high price pen at Pensacon, so now I
Nice.
don't have one. Good problem to have,
I know.
but
I
I've
know. At
been
Dragon, you almost sold it a couple times. People kept picking it up.
people look. People like to look at it. It attracts a lot of
Yeah.
attention, which is half the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I sold it. It was the first pen right off the bat. Guy walked up, saw it, picked it up. It was my first sale of the convention.
Nice.
It's like it's going to be a good con
Yeah. Yeah.
when you
That's
start
good.
off, selling your most expensive thing. But yeah, so I've been debating what I'm going to replace it with,
Hmm.
and I'm coming up with plans. I don't know for sure yet, but it's going to be fancy, whatever it is.
Nice.
But yeah.
So I want to tie this into how you write because I'm curious if there's so I've had many discussions on this show and beyond about creativity breeds energy and energy breeds more creativity, right? You get around people talking shop, you get around things that you're doing or you're watching somebody do something and you're being a small part of that or whatever.
Hmm.
It becomes this thing where you just go home and all of a sudden you're writing 40 pages,
Yeah.
right? It just happens because the energy is there. Do you get that kind of energy from making pens as well? Does that energy flow into writing for you sometimes?
Um, that's a good question. So I would I'll say this. Um, I'm a very weird writer as far as I hear other people's processes, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah,
don't know, maybe I'm a little OCD or something, but often I'll sit down to write and I'll write for a little bit. And even though I know what the next thing is that needs to be on the page,
yeah,
I can't sit there anymore. You know what I mean? Like
I
I
see.
have to get up.
Yeah,
It's like I know the next sentence, but I can't write it down because I got to get up. So when I run into that, sometimes, I'll go out and I'll make a pen. That's 30, 40
yeah,
minutes, make a pen. And then, I'll come back, sit back down, and I can pick right back up where I left off.
yeah,
So I would say, I'm still flexing the creative juices,
yeah.
but it's almost like it's a nice distraction or a way to step away and still be productive,
Hmm.
but it's like changing gears, I
Hmm.
guess. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but I'm a weird
No,
dude.
I
So what are you gonna do?
I totally get it. I mean, and there's other woodworking you do on top of just pen making too. So is that
A
also
little
part
bit.
of the creative process for you?
No, I focus mainly on pens. Most of what I do is lathe work.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so um, yeah, I'm looking at making some other things that I've been thinking about putting on the table, and I've experimented around. Well, before I had to move, I was really experimenting around with it, and I bought some new tools that I would need, and then I had to move. It was a very last minute, kind of thing, and
yeah.
so I haven't got back to that yet. But yeah, like drop spindles, I think are really cool, and I could totally make them, and I've come very close. I had one that was like this close to being done, and then it broke, and it was
Uh,
that's just part of it. So
I
yeah,
so the other aspect of this whole endeavor is something that I think the audience will be really excited to talk about and for us to talk about, and something that I know you're pretty known for because you go out a lot more than the average person does on these shows because this is your
yeah,
job, this is your life,
right,
this is your
yeah.
livelihood, this is how you make your money, this is who you are. uh, and I would love for you to kind of take us through what made that decision for you when you decided to do that for full time, and what kind of kind of give us an outlook. Is it is it still kind of grinding for you, or do you find it there's a process and you've kind of mastered the process in a lot of respects?
Well, I don't feel like I've mastered anything, so I'll start with that. But so I started doing a lot of shows because I don't want to say I made a mistake. I don't consider it a mistake, but I made the unpopular move of I did not write to market for my first series,
Hmm.
right? Which I'm kind of on the fence about writing to market. I get the appeal and I get why it's a good thing, but I got to write what I like. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And like, as already said, I'm a weird dude. So, so my first book, for anybody that hasn't heard of it by now, is it's about a were otter in North Georgia. Now, I don't know if you know this, Joe, but people don't wake up in the morning hoping they can find the next were otter book, right?
Really? That's
I know
surprising
it's
to
shocking. It's shocking. So, I tried marketing it online a little bit, you know, back in the day before I finished the series, and it was mixed results. And you know, because again, nobody's looking for were otters. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Um, and
It's not
people, you know,
it's not
internet,
among Google's top 100 searches, right? So
right? Yeah. Um, and you know, I think people are much more cynical online than they are in person.
uh-huh.
Where, you know, if you see were otter online, I think you're much more likely to think of it as a joke than something serious.
Yeah.
So I went to, sorry about that. I started doing shows in person, and I found I could really sell it in person. It was just night and day. And because that's the series, you know, through as I wrote the books and finished the series, I just did more and more shows. And, you know, I mean, that's where I made my money. So that's where I had to go. So, with my next project, I do plan to market it online more, but at this point, I'm still going to be doing shows for a long time. You know, I don't have any plans to stop. So, yeah, I mean, that's when I started because I wrote a book that's hard to market. So, what are you going to do?
Are do you do you have different game plans for different shows, or do you kind of stick to an overall game plan and kind of adjust as the show goes along, kind of idea?
Mostly it's, you know, stick to the same thing.
Uh-huh.
So, once there's a learning curve with doing shows and selling stuff in person. But once you kind of get used to it, you know what you're doing, you know, you just stick with what works, you
Mm,
know. The only thing that I would consider as far as changing as I go kind of thing is when you start sharing space with more people. Um, like sometimes, you know, depending on what kind of setup you have, you'll set up one way, and then because of traffic flow patterns, you decide, well, this needs to be here, or, you know, and then you
mhm,
change those things on the fly. But by and large, it's the same thing except for you know, layout.
mhm. Is it? Do you? I mean, there's got to be cons where I mean, you obviously you get comfortable. You know certain cons, and you know how the buying patterns are going to happen. But for like cons that you're just investing into, are you a little bit? Are you do you do a little bit more thinking behind those that are the ones you're first going to, as opposed to the ones that you're
Yeah.
already at because you already know the buying patterns? And how do you adjust on those? Is that a lot different to adjust to than say like
So
a Dragon Con that you've been to like 15 times?
so if I'm looking at a show I've never done before, the first thing I'll do is talk to other people who have done it.
Hmm.
You know, go contacts. It's great to be able to
So
talk to
you
people that,
do
you
your
know people that
research.
do things. Yeah. Talk to people, see how they did.
Nice.
And of course, you know, you also reliable people, you
Yeah,
know, people that I trust what they say, because I don't know if you know this, but sometimes people will fudge their numbers a
of
little bit,
course. Yeah.
you know, it happens. I'm not gonna name any names, but I've got some. So, but yeah, talk to some people that I know, you know, will give me an accurate thing of what they've done, and then, but it's also, you know, how do I sell compared to those people generally, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, And like if it's the first year of a show, I mean, I've done them. I'm
Hmm.
not saying I would never do it again, but that's one thing that I'm very wary of is a first year.
Hmm.
There's too much, you know, unknown about it.
Hmm.
But I do want to say, you know, even with shows I've done before, there's always an element of unknown in that you could get a totally different space,
Hmm.
you know. Like I've had really bad spaces at some shows that I
Mm.
knew if I was just a couple rows over, it would
You would
be
kill
completely different experience. You know
it.
what I mean? So it shows most of the shows they won't you get moved around. You don't get the same spot every
Right,
year, you know,
sure.
except for Dragon Con. So there's always a little bit of, you know, where am I going to be this time and how's
Mm,
that going to be? But you know, it really all comes down to crowd. If there's enough people there, I can make it work.
Yeah.
You know, that's the big factor. You know, if I've got people in front of me, I'm going to make some money.
Rob says yo,
Hey,
and
Rob.
Tina says love in person sales. Yeah.
Yep.
Uh, I do you there's several approaches to this, and there's so much advice out there about how to do these things right, and I really feel like a lot of it is crafted to the person too. You can't always say that this is a telltale winner, right? It's because it also depends on the show too. Sometimes different people
Right.
have different things for different shows. Um, but is there something that you've kind of y- is it reading people? Is it more of just numbers? What do you feel like is the most effective idea for you going into a show? You know what
So
I mean?
I talk about this in my book, but I'll
Mhm.
say it here for this audience. So here's what it's like fishing. Okay. Okay. So when you go fishing, you have different kinds of bait, right? Live
Okay.
bait and lures. Thing is, fish don't want a lure, right? As soon as they bite it, they want to spit it back out.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
they love live bait. That's the stuff they want to eat. So I set up my displays to attract the audience. My display is my live bait to attract the interest of the people would be interested in my things.
yeah,
And then when I get a bite, then I can reel them in. So and my trick for that is it's funny. It's funny. Bob Magoo. We do a lot of stuff together. We had this conversation, and I told him this, and as I said, "It's in my book. Here's what I do." And he said, "Oh, I should have paid more attention when I read it." But okay, so here's what I do. I set up the display to attract the right kind of attention,
yeah,
and then I watch people as they go by. And when they look at what I have, right, for more
yeah,
than, a couple seconds,
yeah,
there is some kind of interest going on there,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
at that point, I engage that person. So I'm not just engaging everyone that goes by.
Right.
That's a bad strategy.
Yeah.
But you set up your display where you can attract the right kind of people, and then you have to engage those people, or they'll be interested in it and in the time it takes them to walk by your booth. But if you engage them, you'll do a lot better.
Here's the thing too that I think a lot of authors are not willing to accept. Right, the interest is there, but the sale is a different thing than the interest, right?
Yeah,
And they make a transaction between two people. If you're going to convince this person to give you money, it may not be the first time that you see each other that happens at, and you have to almost kind of be accepting of that, right? You have to plant. It's almost like planting a seed to grow a tree in a lot of respects,
right.
right? And I think a lot of authors get frustrated by that element, right? They go, oh well, I just lost that sale, right? And then I see the guy come back every Sunday and go, you know what, I'm coming back and I'm going to do it. And not everybody's to their word. A lot of people are bullshitting you, but
Sure.
there is that intent, and you have to kind of absorb that as well. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
That's fair, but there's also strategies you can do to mitigate that. So,
Uh-huh.
for
To close
example,
it.
yeah, well, not necessarily close. I mean, even when they get away, look, if somebody walks away and they don't buy it, I don't expect to ever see them again. Maybe they come back, maybe they don't, but I don't ever think, oh, if
Okay.
all those people just come back on Sunday. But what I do is my business card I turned into a little advertisement. Basically, I have my book cover on one side. I've got some reviews on the back with my contact info, that kind of stuff. Um, and whenever I talk to somebody, they get a business card,
Mm,
right? Even if they don't buy, everybody that I talk to gets a business card. And so later, when they're fishing through their pockets and they see it, there's another chance for them to say, "Oh yeah, maybe
mm,
that sounded kind of good. Maybe I'll check it out." Or maybe they do ebook, you know what I mean? And then they get
yeah,
home and now they have a way to look up the ebook, right? If I
yeah,
By giving them something, they have something that they can refer to later to take action on. If they just walk away and they don't have anything, they're not going to remember who I am or what I've done, and they're not going to find it trying to search, online.
mhm.
So, you know,
And Bobby says that Dragon Con is its own unique animal. Absolutely, 1000%.
True.
That's like that's like um that's like going to a three-ring circus almost in a lot of
Right.
respects.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is something on
I've
every floor for everybody.
Yep. Yeah, I've never been to a show like Dragon Con before,
Yeah,
and I
nor have
probably
I.
never will again. It is.
Uh,
It's crazy, but
Yeah.
it's a good crazy.
Yeah, for sure. There's a good energy to it, right? There's a good
Yeah.
vibe to it for the most part. Um, I, the thing I'm curious too about in terms of selling and setups and things of this nature, uh, when you have a bad weekend, right? When you're when it comes out that you just didn't make the money you were projecting, you didn't expect it to, you didn't break even, something happened, maybe car breaks down, you had an extra expense or something like that, right? How do you mitigate that through the event itself, or do you give the event another chance? Do you feel like, okay, that place is cursed, that place is off limits, I'm gonna probably skip that and try something different next time? Or do you feel like, do you go, you know what, I had a bad experience, let me see if I can turn that around and see what happens in the next year? Which is more likely for you in that case?
It depends. Okay. The only time that I have bad shows really are when there aren't enough people there,
Yeah,
right? And if there aren't enough people there, that
it's
is
not worth it.
nothing to do with anything else except for the con itself,
Yeah.
right? It's not pulling for whatever reason. Now, my first show this year, um, there was a couple things going on in the city at the time that the crowds were, lower than expected, but I understood why. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? It
Yeah.
made sense. It was just bad luck. What are you going to do? And so, I mean, I've already booked for that one for next year.
Mhm.
It's not the show's fault, you know, but like if I can't find any reason for a bad turnout,
Yeah.
then that's the show's fault in my book. And you know, it's not worth going back to risk it again, you
Yeah.
know. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'll try to find why the people weren't there, but if I can't find anything, then the only answer left is they just didn't have the draw.
Yeah.
So,
Are you more encouraged if a show makes changes versus, or is that more of a red flag for you if they make too many changes?
well, I think that depends on the show's age
Mm,
because, like I said, I'm wary of first year shows as it is,
hmm.
and those are the most likely the shows to make changes. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'd rather get in on year 2 or 3 when they've kind of ironed everything out already and
Yeah.
they don't have to change so much. But I mean, I don't the other thing is if a
But
show does
can a
make a
show run its
change.
course? Can a show run its course and have to change? And
Oh,
you
yeah,
feel
yeah,
like
yeah,
that?
absolutely. There's a con in Tennessee that has been slowly, and I do it every year. It's not one of my big earners, but I just like the show, so I go. But it used to be huge and it is progressively, less and
Right.
less,
Yeah.
and I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I
Mhm.
don't know that if they'll be able to make some change to pull in, a new crowd or whatever, but I mean, I'll keep doing it. It's not far, it's not expensive, so,
Mm.
you know, it's a fun show. So what,
So there
what
are contingencies you'll make even if the show doesn't end up being
yeah.
fruitful for you.
I mean, let me look. L- I will not do a show that I can't make money at, right?
Yeah.
This is my livelihood. This is what I do. So, I mean, that's number one. If I can't
Yeah.
make money there, like the Tennessee show I'm talking about, yeah, it's not a big earner, but I still make money. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I get
I'm still covering what I need. Could it be better? Yeah. They could maybe do something to get more people in or I don't know what. That's their side, not my side, but
you. Yeah.
you know. I'm getting what I
Is
need
there
out of
is
it.
there value beyond money for you at this point? Is networking and context anything for you at this point, or
Um,
do you feel like it has to be somewhere you can sell in order to go?
has to be somewhere I can sell
Yeah,
because again, this is what I do. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Now, I'm all
You're in the
for
office.
contacts.
You're in the office on the weekend, basically.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'm all for networking and contacts. It's real important. I love doing it, you know. I love
yeah.
hanging out with authors and talking shop. Um, oh, well, I am going to I got talked into it, going to the Author Nation this year in Vegas.
Uh huh.
So that I'm not making any money at, but that is just networking and, you know, workshops and stuff. So I'm doing that. So I guess, you know, yeah, I will do something if I'm guaranteed, but I'm not trying to sell
Well,
there
at
either.
least
You know what
once
I
a
mean?
year, right? Once a year, maybe,
Right.
right?
One time a year. Yeah, I can take that.
Yeah, because and for people who don't realize it too, I think a lot, like especially like Dragon Con. Dragon Con's especially interesting because really for folks like myself who don't sell at these events, the bar is the most the bar is the most fruitful place I can be at, right? And
Right.
that's not that's not because I like the going to the bars. I do like going to the bars, but it is the amount of people I talk to in one night is more than I can talk to in my on my
Yeah.
network in the entire year. Really, honestly, and so especially at Dragon Con when the bar goes from the actual bar to all the way to the second floor of the hotel. You know,
Right.
because it's just people are spread out and talking and doing those kind of things. But that that is interesting because and for folks like you what I think people are scared of is doing both things, but you only work from 9 to 6. At 6 o'clock, you're done, and you can have all that time between 6 and 10
Yep.
to go eat, hang out with authors. I know because we've had many meals
Yep.
together, and hang out with authors that time, and then you go to the bar and you hang out with authors at that time too. So networking can be part of the equation. It doesn't have to be either or,
Sure.
right?
And it is part of the equation. Absolutely. You know, it's real common that at any show I do, we will get together with, you know, a big group of authors that are there in the vendor hall and go do dinner at least one night,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, that's just part of it.
Yeah,
So if you're not doing that, in my opinion, you're doing it wrong.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean that's a big part of it. But you know, you need a support group and a large list of contacts for numerous reasons.
yeah.
But yeah,
Ao Mango says hello, and he says that
yep,
he
bud.
loves to do shows. Uh, yeah, it is fascinating. Amongst all of this, you have to have something to sell, and
Right.
for you, I mean, I'm curious about your journey from this science fiction route that you took to lit RPG. Were these both like things you wanted to write, or was lit RPG something you discovered? How did you get from one end to the other? That's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, so I started with the urban fantasy, and then so lit RPG. A friend of mine I went to high school with, a good friend of mine, he sent me a message one day and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about writing a book. Can we go do lunch and I can pick your brain?" And it's like, "Sure." So we met. He's local to me, so we met up at a restaurant. And I'd heard about lit RPG. I'd never read one. You know
Uh,
what I mean? I knew of it.
yeah,
And but that's what he wanted to write. That was the main thing he read. And I was like, okay. So I told him I never read one, but we had a conversation and he sent me some popular ones, two of the most popular ones out at that time on audiobooks. I listened to all my books. He sent them to me. So I listened to them. And the first one that I listened to was I don't want to say anything bad about the genre, which this is not the genre. I'm speaking bad about this author specifically because it was the worst book I've ever read. Oh my God, it was so bad. But, but now let me tell you, I don't finish books if they're bad. Like if they bug me, they get three tries and then I'm done. Like the third time I'm annoyed by a book, I'm done with it. That's it. This book, I was screaming at the the recording like no, this doesn't make any sense and blah blah, but I finished the book.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yeah, I was so intrigued by the concept of a lit RPG that I finished a horrible book. And at the end of it, it was like, okay, this is really cool. And part of me was also, if this is one of the most popular ones out there and it's this bad, like, what could I do in this genre? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I still think lit RPG is in the place where sci-fi and fantasy was in like the 60s and 70s, where, if you just anything you put out will sell. You
Yeah,
know, people haven't really refined their tastes yet.
yeah.
So,
Is
yeah.
the palette for it, not just the palette for it, but is the writing itself a little suspect too in a lot of respects
Oh,
for you?
oh, big time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Look, um
I think
a couple
that's
years
what I've
ago,
been hearing is like that's the
yeah,
difference between the two. It's almost kind
it's
of comical in a lot of respects amongst authors in that respect.
yeah. And so part of the problem, okay, when I was researching around that time, I had that meeting with my friend. I started researching a little bit and I ran across a news article that was just talking about a Reddit post, because that's news nowadays.
Yeah.
Um, but the Reddit post is saying that lit RPG is a great genre to start writing in because it's easier to write than sci-fi and fantasy.
Mm.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's easier to write badly than
Yeah.
sci-fi and fantasy, but it's a more complicated system, right? And more complicated means more difficult.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's the issue.
I read a quote, and I'm not going to attribute who quoted it, but I read a quote from somebody who said that for everybody complaining about AI existing, has existed for 10 years. It's called lit RPG,
Right.
and
Right. Yeah. So yeah, but that's how I got started with it. And then I'd written the urban fantasy and I decided that I was going to do a sci-fi lit RPG because most of it was fantasy.
uh,
And I just kind of wanted to write something sci-fi, you know what
mm,
I mean? So
yeah,
mine's a sci-fi.
yeah.
And yeah.
When you completed your urban fantasy series, what did you feel about that? Was there a certain kind of hey, I finished something, or were you sad to let it go? Are you, now that you have some distance between it now too, are you looking at that world and going, there's some more things I could do with that world, or maybe even with the story I've been telling in that world, or have you completely just let it all go away and tried to move on to something different?
So I pretty much let it go.
Hmm.
So I had enough ideas to write about 7 or 8 books, like
Hmm.
written down. This is going to be this book. This is going to be this book.
In the
In
same
that
world
realm.
or different,
Yeah,
different. I
same series, same main character,
gotcha.
but I wrapped it at 3 books. And the reason it was ultimately a financial decision of there's a lot of people that won't touch a series until it's done,
Right.
right? And so um I decided I was going to wrap the series and then, maybe I would, you know, do a different character in the same world or something, but just something so I could have a complete series just to up sales because again, this is my livelihood here. Um and it worked, right? I've
Yeah.
sales increased dramatically and then, I do other things we've talked about before to boost those sales as well. But so that's why I wrapped it there. Now, since I've been away from it, I have a couple problems. First is at the end of book 3, I broke the world. Okay. So, and if I don't go back to it, I don't have to figure that out. you know, it can just be broken. But if I go back and write in anything that happens after the events
Yeah,
of
you
that
have to
book,
come up with an explanation.
I have to figure out how to unbreak the world. So that's problematic.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know how I would do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I figured that
Yeah.
out since then, thinking about it. But at
Yeah,
the same
sure.
time, it's like, um, and the other thing is, I'm just kind of done with it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? At least that series. I may write something in that
There's only
world
so
at
far
some
where
point in
honor
the
can take
future.
you, right?
Yes. I mean, I would have to change up characters,
Sure.
and you know what I mean. It would be very different if I went back to that world again.
Yeah. Is 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 humor always going to be a part of what you do as well? Do you feel like you're always going to have some kind of humorous glint to what you try to do, even if it is RPG versus urban fantasy, or do you feel like there's a more serious Ben that we haven't seen yet that we're clamoring to see?
I don't know. That's a good question. Um,
Because I mean, you
humor.
can't have a series about a were otter without there being some sort of humor
There's
involved,
some
right?
humor. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's humor. Let me say a distinction here. I don't write comedy, right?
Right, 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 right.
Never
It's
comedy,
no, no, and
but humor.
I wasn't
Yeah, yeah.
insinuating that. I know, but
Uh, but yeah, no, the big difference there. But so I think I will probably always use humor in anything I'm doing.
mm,
I mean, I don't see the disadvantage to it,
mhm,
at least in my style of writing, you know what I
mhm.
mean? And I
Yeah,
enjoy it, you know.
yeah. It's
More
part of you
serious.
too, right? It shows
Yeah.
your personality,
I mean, I'm putting me on the page,
right?
so
And
I mean, that being
you're
said,
writing stuff you wanna read too, that's what you said, so,
right. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's the ultimate driving factor in what I write is
Mhm.
what do I want to read. But I mean, that being said, the Keeper Chronicles, my first series, it's pretty serious, oh, by
Yeah,
and large. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, but it has its moments, and I'd like to say I use those moments strategically because, I'm just such an expert that I can do that, but
yeah.
I'm sure I've messed it up a little bit here and there, but yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Is there certain things you can do with your first series? And I say this with there's not writing wise, but marketing wise. Have you looked at like I mean you do a lot of stuff with Richard Fierce and
Mhm.
what he's doing with his hardcovers and the designs on the sides and all the intricate things that he's created to revamp that series for himself. Are there certain things you're looking at that other authors and other people who are selling are doing that you think that you could apply to your first series that you might be looking at doing?
Yeah. Well, I do want to do one of those fancy hardcovers like he does.
Mhm.
The foil cover, and
Yeah.
I do want to do one of those because the people yeah, we do a lot of shows together, and I see people just walk up from
Yeah.
seeing the book and buy it. They don't even know what it's about.
Yeah.
They're buying it to put on the shelf. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can handle that.
Yeah. Yeah,
So yeah, I would.
I've literally seen Richard Fierce sell something without ever speaking, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah, all the time. It's crazy. Um, so I do want to get one of those, but I mean, the series is limited by the were otter aspect of it. You know what I mean? I mean that's the big problem with the series
Right.
is look, you hear were otter and you're either going to be on board ready to go or you're not going to touch it.
Mhm.
Right? There's no in between there. So I think I don't think it would be applicable to a lot of the things that people do just based off of that alone. That's why I don't market it online because,
Mhm.
you know, yeah, I would make some more sales, but I don't think I would make enough sales to justify the expense of, marketing.
Mhm.
So maybe, but that hasn't been my experience with it. So
Is that the next big thing you think is foil and special editions the next big thing, or do you feel like I mean, audiobooks have never really been popular on tables. That's a hard thing to sell in person, right? But
you can do it. Uh,
yeah.
I'm looking at that.
Uh-huh.
So the people that read audiobooks, so actually, okay, I'm about to say this and contradict myself. So I became aware of a new trend recently, immersive reading, I think they call it. Have you heard
Okay,
of it?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Where they get the paperback or
Yeah.
ebook and then they listen to the audiobook as they read it, right?
Yeah.
So they're following along. And I gave away a audiobook at an event and then the lady bought the book because that's what she does. So I actually sold a paperback because I gave away an audiobook. But I mean, you can sell them at the table. The people that beyond immersive readers, people that listen to books, I think that's largely the only way they read,
Mhm.
you know. Um,
Do you have like a QR code
so
or something for that you put on the table?
no, I'm still debating. I haven't actually taken that steps. What I have right now is a bunch of codes that,
Yeah,
I will give out periodically
yeah,
for Audible.
yeah,
So that's what I do.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, and I think the fancy hardcovers are going to be the next big thing. Uh, but well, at least at shows, people that do a lot of shows,
Hmm.
they're going to have a lot of hardbacks because they sell well, and other people see people with these selling well, so then they get them. But like anything else, when everybody has them, they'll lose their splendor to a
Yeah,
certain extent. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So it's going to be
Yeah, you
one of
can
those
only buy them once, right? I mean,
right. If you got in early on the fancy hardback thing, then you will have done better than getting in later. So yeah.
I'm curious about your opinion about direct sales. Do you feel like Amazon's going to be dying here, and that people are headed toward that direction? What direction are you looking at if you get back on online? Is that where your appeal is direct sales, or do you feel like I'm gonna let Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all them do the work for me?
Well, I do sell direct on my site now.
Yeah,
For anybody that wants, can find it, wants to get a book that way. And I do a few here and there. It's not anything major. But I mean, I don't think Amazon's going to die. You know,
yeah,
there's people that, there's some people that don't use it for, whatever reasons they decide not to use it. But I've come to the conclusion with any kind of, movement or people calling for boycotts or whatever, there's a small group that cares intensely and most people don't care at all,
mm,
so I don't see Amazon going anywhere.
hmm.
Um, but I mean, like I said, I'll sell on Amazon, I sell through Barnes and Noble, I'll sell anywhere that I can sell at, including my website. So check that out.
Do
But
you feel
yeah.
do you feel like um you're missing a piece of the pie though if you're doing the Amazon Kindle Unlimited thing, or do you feel like you know I want to keep all the money, so direct sales is a good way to do that, but that's a lot of work too, right? So that's a lot more work than probably just putting it on Amazon and KU and doing that, right? So
Well, it is, but I think just having your book on KU doesn't do much for you. You know what I
mhm.
mean?
Yeah,
You still have to market it, and
yeah,
marketing is just as much work, if not more, than going to shows. You know what
right,
I mean?
yeah,
It's a whole other job. So, I I have my series on KU currently, but again, if you're not pushing people toward it, they're not going to find it because
yeah,
there's so much on KU.
yeah,
And
yeah.
going wide, yeah, maybe, but again, you'd have to advertise. Again, you have to be the one to push people towards your work, or they're not going to find it, no matter where it is. So,
And honestly, because of the amount of shows you do, you're probably more apt to just say, "Hey, come buy it from me directly." Let me put it in your hand from my hand, right? Kind of idea.
yeah, I mean, well, look, I make the most money that way.
Right.
So, but like I tell people ask me, "Oh, what way can I buy it where you get the most?" And I tell them, "Oh yeah, right here." you know, but I also tell them however they want to consume it, if they get it, I am happy. I don't it's, if they read it, I would rather them get it Kindle Unlimited and I make, $1.50 off of it than them not read it and not have a chance to talk about it if they like it, tell other people about it, that kind of thing. Because that's more valuable in the long run than making, $10 off of a paperback sale.
Mhm.
So
Is there a genre or something you're looking to try that you haven't attempted, or that you're thinking about attempting, that you're kind of interested in looking at? Because you tend to like you said, just go with the wind and how you feel and what you want to
Yeah.
read, right? Is there something you're looking at that you're trying that you haven't been able to put out there yet that you're looking at doing?
I've got two things that I really want to do
Hmm.
that I've been working on behind the scenes. I've talked about them a little bit here and there on stuff.
Hmm.
So one is a weird Western that it's so cool. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
just love it.
yeah. You pitched
But
that
I
one to
mean,
me at Dragon Con. I
yeah,
remember.
yeah, it's so cool.
It
And
is
then
cool.
the other one is uh it's it's based off of Irish werewolf mythology. It's basically set. It's not Ireland, but it's based off of Bronze Age Ireland,
Uh,
right? Yeah, about a kingdom of werewolves, and it is also so cool. I've done so much work and world building on it already, and then every time I start to write it, or when I have tried to write it in the past, I get a little bit in and realized I don't know, I haven't done the right world building. I got to go back and do some more, and But right now I'm working on the lit RPG. I'm trying to focus on that,
yeah.
get some things there. I just, if I can batten down. I had a whole plan at the beginning of the year that got thrown out because of life. But if I could get back to plan, I should be able to start cranking some books out, and then maybe I can get to some of these that I haven't been able to, because I
Mhm.
really want to put them out. They're so cool. But
How important it
anyway,
is? How important is it for you as a businessman to have something new every time you go to something different?
it's pretty important. So I try to have something new on the table. I do a lot of repeat shows. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
So every time I'm back, I try to have something new on the table. Because if you don't, You know, you have people that bought your stuff, they come back, they like it. Well, what do you have for them?
yeah. What
They're
have you
not going to
done
buy the
for me
same book
lately?
again. So I try to have something new on the table every show, and I'll be able to do that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I should be able to put at least two novels out a year. My plan was actually for more than that. But this year's already, we're only 3 months in, but it's already gotten off track.
Mm,
But yeah, I mean, so with 2 books a year, that's guaranteed I will have something new no matter where I'm at. But yeah, it's important. That's kind of the bare minimum. Like if you could put out one thing a year,
mhm,
if that's all you can do, but you can do it reliably, you can still do well at in-person shows. More would be better
mhm.
because, maybe those people that read that other like I was writing a fantasy, now I'm writing sci-fi. Maybe those people don't like sci-fi, but maybe
Yeah,
they would really, really like my Bronze Age werewolf book. You know what I mean? So if
yeah.
I could get just a few things going, then yeah, I'd have a lot more for varied tastes.
Mm.
So
Do you feel like volume is king, or do you feel like the salesperson's king?
salesperson by like this much.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I mean, you could have a giant catalog, but if you can't sell anything, then what's the point?
Hmm.
But if you can sell, but you don't have a big catalog, then you're going to
Yeah,
sell, but
it's a double-edged
you're going to
sword in
run
a lot
out
of
of stuff.
respects. It seems like
Yeah,
a double-edged
you
sword,
need
right?
both.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need a big catalog, and you need to be able to move that catalog.
Mhm.
So yeah, they're relying on each other to a certain extent.
What would you say to somebody who's making their first go around? Let's say they have 3 or 4 books, right? They're making their first go around. They're not apt at shows like yourself, so you would know. I mean, even if it was the first show you ever been to, you would know how many books to bring and things like that.
Mhm.
What do you say is a good formula or strategy for that aspect of starting a show?
How many books to bring,
Yeah,
or
what books to bring? Prepared to should they have change? What kind of things do you think they should be prepared for?
okay? Well, all this is in my sales book too,
Uh,
but you need. I think okay.
I'm not trying to tell everybody the whole
You know
book.
what, Joe?
Give
We'll
it.
just extend a little bit, and I'll just tell you everything in the book. Okay? No, that's cool. Okay, so I think that there are three things you have to have. Okay, have to. One, a tablecloth.
Mm.
Have to have a tablecloth. Two, you have to have some way to display your books, so book stands, whatever. And three, you have to be able to take payments. Um, and that means either, something like a Square, to take card payments, or
Mm.
you also need um, change.
Mm.
If you don't have change, you can't take cash.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of people now, there's like a whole movement apparently that's just no cash, which makes no sense to me
Yeah.
because cash is as good as money, you
Yeah.
know? So, but yeah, so either you need a Square and you need
Especially in
at
a
least some
spot like
change.
there's Dragon Con may be a little different. I would trust Dragon Con a little bit more than I would trust Chattanooga Con just because of the sheer volume, and I know that they have safeguards in place and they're very weary of their reputation and things. And I'm not saying that ChatCon's not, but
Mm,
you go to a place like that where there's a lot of vendors and you constantly using your card and your card, the opportunity to get compromised becomes greater and greater and greater. So cash is king in that respect. I think a lot of times too. That's what like when I go to a ball game, I'll use my
right.
card once, and I have cash for the rest of the time because I don't want to keep using my card because I know that ultimately those transactions, one of those might get compromised, right? So
Huh.
that's kind of how I look at it. So if you're doing
I
cashless, that's I don't know that people would be in for that, you know?
I think they would. But I mean, most of the transactions are card.
Yeah,
But okay, so there's two kinds of shows. There are vendor like I'm sorry, like celebrity signing shows, right?
yeah,
Where the only thing there are celebrities and vendors. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
And then there are conventions, more normal kind of conventions where there's panels and vendor hall and all the
yeah.
other stuff going on. So at celebrity shows, all the celebrities only take cash. So everybody there has cash. So you will do a lot of cash sales at a celebrity show,
Interesting.
compared to a normal convention. So that's yeah. You
That's
can
interesting.
you can go if yeah, go into a celebrity show, you need your change. Absolutely. Yeah. And if you
Awesome.
get stuck out and you can swing by a Publix and they'll make you some change at the desk there, just a
We keep
little
you
tip.
keep mentioning this book. Tell everybody the name of it for fuck's sake, so people can go get it, so they can talk about it.
Um I just happen to have it right here.
Hey, there you
Oh, The
go.
Art of Selling Books. I can't do by
Ah.
me. But yeah, that's it. And it's just my
It's a
whole
very quick
sales
read.
strategy.
It's a great read.
Yeah.
It's actually very quick. I've read it. It's very quick. It's like 160 pages. It's not that bad. So it's a really good book to absorb. I think if you want to get into the business. So
Yeah. It's actually a little side note about this book. It's the fastest book I've ever written, hands down. So it started out, I got asked to speak at the Northeast Georgia Writers Club. I think that's their name. And I was like, oh, this is the first writers group I've ever spoken for. So I was, thinking, what am I going to talk about? So I said, I'm going to do a little talk about in-person sales. So I came up with this whole thing and I got up there and I was talking and I was up there for a while and everybody was into it. We're asking questions and stuff. And I looked at the Kim, the guy that invited me, and I said, "How much longer do I have? I feel like I've been up there a little bit, you know?" And he said, "Oh, you were supposed to be done 30 minutes ago." I said, "Oh." He said, "It's okay. It's okay. Keep going." So yeah, so I ran way over, had no idea, but they all enjoyed it. They said it was one of the best talks. And then I gave the talk again at the Atlanta Self Publishing Conference the first year. It was the highest rated talk of the show.
nice.
And then since I already had all the information, I sat down and just put it in book form and I wrote it in 3 days. Um, yeah, I have my word count record on one of those days of it was 11,746, I think. But
Nice.
that's typing. That's not dictation or anything. That
Yeah.
was typing
That's
it
you
all out.
going.
Yes. I woke up, I didn't even get out of bed. I pulled the computer into my lap and typed, and then at night I set it back down. That was it all day long. But yeah. Oh yeah.
Are you finding things that you that as you go along that you want to add to maybe do a second volume? Do you feel like there's
Yeah.
always an evolution to this that you're creating, that you're going to end up doing more volumes for it?
Yeah, I'm gonna do a second edition at some point.
Uh-huh.
I've got a, I'm making little notes here and there of, oh, I should put that in, I should put
Yeah,
that in. And whenever I get enough to justify a second edition, then I'll do a second edition. But I mean, it's solid the way it is. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's really good. It's really I read it. It's really good. I really am. I'm appreciative, and I think it's written in your voice, which I think is very palatable. I think that's part of
yeah,
the idea of it. So
that's
you
the
know,
only way I know how to write.
yeah. I think ultimately that's something that I think has been very valuable for me this year in this show, and the idea of that who we are leaks into the page, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what we are, right? And or that's
Right,
what we do, or we know that person. We just give a little bit of ourselves to it to authenticate a voice and an idea, and I think that's very prevalent, and I think that's why that book works really well for me, because I like talking to you. So it was like talking to you. It was kind of
right.
like listening to you have tell me its story, and it was very much like that. And that I think that those kind of books resonate with people. I think in terms of instead of writing a volume book where A equals B to equal C, I don't want to do another
Right.
fucking equation, right?
So you skipped over the sections that had math in them,
Yeah,
is what I
no, not
hear.
necessarily. But I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna read what Ben thinks about this, and then
Right.
that'll be good enough. I'll accept it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah.
So, uh, Ben, thank you so much. I couldn't have thought of a better person to finish this series off with this year. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come talk to you and do all this. Um, Tell everybody where they can find these wonderful books of yours and learn
Yeah.
more about you, and where you're going to be in the next few weeks, so people can come and see you as
Oh.
well.
Well, you can find me everywhere online under or as author Ben Meeks. It's my website, social media, etc. Patreon. As far as where I'm going to be, let's see. Let me look at my calendar. I can't keep it straight. We're in March. Okay, so I'm going to be at GalaxyCon Richmond this weekend. Next weekend, Knoxville Book Festival. Next weekend, C2E2 Chicago. And then the last week of April, I'm going to be in Huntsville.
Yeah, Chicago, you're spreading out. I like it.
That's right. Got to go where the money is.
I love it. I look forward to seeing you myself in person here soon, and thank you, my friend, so much for this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, that's that's our season. That's our show. 21 Grams. Thank you so much for all the
Woo-hoo.
guests, all 21 of you that joined me for these nice little conversations. I really appreciate it. It's always good to do that because it's always great. It's always time to go indie now, and we'll see you again soon on everything else we're doing. Bye, everybody.